There's an infamous saying, and I'm sure you've heard of it, like a kid in a candy store. And I think I could speak for all three of us on the show and probably many others when I say it is like being a kid in a candy store right now as we see our phones light up like Clark Griswold's house on Christmas when we see all these NFL free agent signings. I mean, it is worse than an Oprah meme of you get a free agent, you get a free agent, you get a free agent. It is happening everywhere right now. And we had talked about how March is synonymous with madness and mayhem, mainly because of March Madness basketball. But I think we may have to include this record setting free agency that is happening right in front of our eyes. You do not want to miss this. I am your host, Matthew Raridan, and this is Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. What's going on, everyone, and welcome to another installment of Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. And man, guys, what is happening just transpired over the last 24 to 48 hours once the legal tampering period opened with NFL free agency. It has been insane. I mean, it's been crazy. If you're on Twitter, you're probably seeing the hashtag free agency frenzy, football frenzy, whatever it is, because it is a frenzy what is happening right now. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this before. And we're going to jump and talk about all of this right now. But first, I want to introduce my co host today. We've got David Street
What's up, y'all?
and we've got Ed Smith.
Welcome.
Guys, with the day and age of Twitter, social media, smartphones, I went ahead and turned on my notifications for Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter, Pro Football Talk, because these are the guys that are getting the scoops the second they happen, and they're alerting me. So it's almost like I'm getting it at the same time as them. Just I'm not as special as them, but seeing it come across my phone, it seems like honestly, I can't go 10 seconds without a new alert coming up. It's crazy. I don't even know how my phone's still alive, but like, it's like, the Jay Giles band, Centerfold. It's like you're seeing this and your eyes are brightening up because did my team just get someone or who's this big free agent star that's going to another team? And I know you guys have been seeing it the last 48 hours, but I'm just gonna ask first before we talk about these specific players. Have you guys ever seen this before?
David.
Can't say that I have, and if I have, I certainly don't remember the last time it happened.
The last time I've seen the ground shake this much was the 1989 World Series. That was that. This
Yeah,
has
like
been
literal
absolutely
earthquake.
insane. The ground is shaking underneath the NFL, just reshaping everything.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about the Battle of Bay. The wrong team won that World Series, but we
Hey,
could
you guys
talk
went on to win
about.
3 World Series like 20 years later, so
Yeah, we can talk about Beastquake. I mean, I'm not a Seahawks fan, but I mean that happened there too. But yes, Ed, I love the reference, the analogy because it's true. It is rumbling. It is rumbling, and there's going to be a lot of new faces in the NFL. Or sorry, new or teams, new jerseys that you're seeing these old faces, and it's gonna be a little weird. But let's talk about the first one. This is actually his third team that he's been on. From Michigan State, was drafted to Washington, and then was traded to Minnesota, and now we see him in a new uniform, and that is Kirk Cousins to the Atlanta Falcons for a 4-year, $180 million deal. And this is after a torn Achilles. I mean, guys, did he just fleeced the Atlanta Falcons?
After he fleeced the Redskins. After he fleeced the Vikings, now he's fleecing the Falcons. I it's Kirk Thuggins. It's you know the count is over. He is just knocked out GMs all over the NFL, and there's nothing anybody can do about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm convinced this guy could get a loan in the Great Depression. I mean, I don't know how he does it, but he seems to do it every single time that he just controls the negotiations. Whatever he says goes. And uh, 30, is it 35 or 37 that Kirk Cousins is at?
He's at
Regardless,
35.
35. I mean, I'm not saying that's old, but that's not the youngest in the NFL. And to be coming off torn Achilles like Aaron Rodgers, still a lot of money to give him, especially 100 millions guaranteed, and he's getting 90 million of that in the first 2 years alone. So they they're giving him everything up front. You want it, you got it.
Very much so. And it what it does is it gives some stability and consistency at the quarterback position for a team that is better in roster at almost every other position than what the quarterback was last year. This is going to elevate them to be closer to that top 5 NFC team that the rest of the team would be if before getting Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, I think as a free agent, not I'm not saying the team. I mean, you can kind of say that without trying to sound too redundant right now. But as a free agent, this had to have been one of the smartest moves because, as we know, and this is not a shot at you, David, but the NFC South is the weakest division in the NFL. And for a guy like Kirk Cousins to go there to a team in Atlanta that has a lot of talent around them, I mean, that had to have been so smart because it's almost like you're guaranteed a playoff spot just like that. So they are going to have to get over some hurdles, including the defending NFC champs in the Tampa Bay Bucks. But he's looking pretty good with the talent that he has around him. And does this make them a contender? Playoff contender, yes. Super Bowl contender, I would not say so. Do you guys agree with that?
I think I think now the Falcons are more of a contender than they were before, and I think we can all agree that Kirk Cousins is certainly now the best quarterback that the Falcons have had since Matt Ryan. And personally, as a Florida fan, I'm very excited for Kyle Pitts because when he got drafted to the Falcons, he had to deal with average to below average quarterbacks. So I'm happy that he's finally getting a quarterback like Kirk Cousins. Who can certainly air it out more than Desmond Ritter ever can. So the Falcons are more of a contender, but I wouldn't say that they're a contender per se.
Ed?
I would, like I was just saying, I think they are a top 5 roster in the NFC for sure with this move. And they've got young talent all around them. They've got good players all around them. What they have lacked is that binding force, that binding captain that's been there, he's seen it, and he's done it. Now, granted, it's only the one playoff win. We all know about that, but it's somebody that is a stabilizing force in the huddle that can control the huddle. It isn't some young guy that you're trying to bring along. It's somebody that's been in this league and knows how the league works, and he can actually elevate those players that are just trying to figure it out into players that can work the offense because they have confidence in their quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. And David, you kind of almost took the words out of my mouth. One of the biggest winners in this signing was Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts, coming into the NFL, was really highly rated to be this next big thing. They couldn't tell, is he just going to be a tight end, receiver? Well, he could be both. And he needs that quarterback that's really going to help him shine even more. And Kirk Cousins could very well be that guy. And it almost seemed like it was almost premeditated because we saw the reports of them buying a house down there. Granted, I pretty sure it isn't him or his wife that's from down there. So if you want to read into it, but it is happening. He is going down there, and that does change things for Atlanta. They needed a quarterback. They still have other pieces that they need to really piece together, but
Yeah,
Kirk Cousins, yeah.
I love all the moron Georgia fans who are already saying that Kyle Pitts is a bust. Like, yeah, okay, like you try putting up good receiving numbers when you have Desmond Ritter as your quarterback, dumbass.
Well,
Hey,
and we want to take a second and just imagine what Atlanta could have done in this place, and they didn't, and that was go after Justin Fields. That was floating out there, but this makes more sense in the not in a true long term sense, but in opening the window for success sense. Because right now, windows in the NFL being open for success, playoff success, division title success, those are much smaller than what they used to be. So this is taking advantage of that window when you have players like Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson. You know, these are playmakers that need that figure that can put them in the right place on the field as opposed to somebody that is trying to remember what the playbook looked like.
Is it safe to now say that Justin Fields might be one of the biggest busts in recent memory? I mean, he was projected to be a top 5 pick. I think he ended up being the 11th pick, but still a borderline top 10 pick. And like, has he been outright terrible? No, but he certainly hasn't lived up to the hype that he received coming into the NFL.
Are you saying that because he has not been traded for anything better than a third round pick so far in this cycle? Because that's on the Bears GM. It's his job to get the most out of the trade, and he just hasn't done it. And he waited too long. He waited until this tampering period opened up. Now he's going to have to wait for somebody to get injured in preseason to finally offload Justin Fields after this draft, in which we all know they're taking Caleb Williams.
Mm.
yeah, I mean, Josh Rosen could probably be up there as one of the biggest busts recently too, but or Mitch
Well,
Trubisky.
I'm sorry, Justin Fields. Don't you think he deserves a better draft pick than what Mac Jones got?
I'd say so. I mean, only because I think the upside could be higher, or the ceiling for Fields, because he hasn't been able to show his full potential.
Mm-hmm.
But that just shows you the Bears organization right there. I think I mean, they showed their cards early. They went into the combine pretty much saying that we want to do the trade this weekend. Guess what didn't happen? Okay, well, let's try to do it before the tampering period opens. That didn't happen. Okay, let's just wait to see how the dominoes fall, and then we'll make it happen. Well, guess what? The dominoes fell. Guess what's still not happening? A trade. I mean, that organization right now is a joke. I mean, they're pretty much going down the same path that the Browns went down when they went through a lot of issues, and it's
I
just looking very similar.
I think it kind of says a lot about the Bears organization when within the last 10 years or so, arguably the best quarterback that they've had is Mitchell Trubisky, and Trubisky sucks.
And then and the thing they traded and drafted him over
Yeah,
Mahomes.
probably one of the all-time worst draft moves ever.
Was it worth it for Atlanta? Was it worth the money that they're shelling out? I think that's the big question floating around right now is was it worth the money? Because Kirk Cousins by himself is not worth 4 years, $180 million. He isn't. But it's worth it for that organization to pay him that to get what they're getting. And I think that's the distinction that we have to make with this. And good on Kirk Cousins. He has been excellent with the timing on these deals because the 2 franchise years he spent in Washington before before going to Minnesota, when they were looking for a long term solution, he became Mr. Minnesota. And now the timing for this deal to take place, he's just been the best on that. But just goes to show that Atlanta is a better organization right now than the Chicago Bears because they knew exactly what they needed. They went after what they needed. They did not hesitate because this was done within an hour of the tampering period opening up. So this is, I would say, probably the best move of this whole free agency tampering period. But there have been so many moves to get to that it's hard to say that. But I don't think there's a better one for the organization itself than Kirk Cousins to Atlanta.
Yeah, I could agree with that. I mean, they still have, a great position in the draft too. I mean, what are they sitting at 8, I think? They are still looking good there. So to give this guy money and to kind of give him the reins of let's change this thing around. I totally see and agree why they would do that, but I want to jump to actually another organization that, if this is any indication of their free agency, they mean business and they want to change this organization around. And that is the Las Vegas Raiders. I mean, from bringing back Antonio Pierce as their head coach, that right there told me a lot that they believe in this franchise, but they want to get better. So what do? They signed Christian Wilkins to a 4-year, $110 million contract to sit along the sides of Max Crosby. I mean, that's pretty damn scary. So they know where their strength is, and they just got even stronger there. And one of their weaknesses was their quarterback room. And although this may not seem desirable to others, it is to them. And they brought Gardner Minshew in on a 2-year deal to battle it out with Aiden O'Connell. But we know who's ultimately probably going to get the starting nod, bearing they don't draft a quarterback. But according to Antonio Pierce, this seems to be that who they want to roll with, and that's Gardner Minshew. I'm sure you guys agree with the Christian Wilkins deal, so I'll ask you that. But do you guys agree with the Gardner Minshew deal?
I mean, when it comes to the Gardner Minshew deal, I think you're right on the money, Matthew. I think this is just more to kind of set a sort of competitive balance between him and Aiden O'Connell. The kind of deal to just, I don't know, I guess help Aiden O'Connell prepare to become the starter, because I think we all know that Aiden O'Connell is likely going to be the starter. So
What about you, Ed?
What I have, what I've heard uh, Antonio Pierce say is he didn't want to go out and get a band aid for the quarterback position after moving on from Garoppolo and everything else. And this is a band aid. Gardner Minshew is, he had that splash when he first burst onto the scene, and the the big mustache and everything, and he was the superhero of the day, and now he's a guy that should be holding a clipboard that can come in and make a couple throws to get you through the end of the game. Last year he was thrust into a position in which he shouldn't have been, and he did well by getting the Colts just about to the playoffs. It's a band-aid, and that's all it is. To me, this is something that maybe they're looking to have Minshew kind of mentor O'Connell on what it looks like to be a starting quarterback in the NFL and what he would need to do to get there. But this is not long term, and the deal is structured to where it's not supposed to be. Now with Christian Wilkins, that is a, we are going to win by beating you up front, and there is nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, it just strikes me as weird because I'm thinking originally this Gardner Minshew thing. It's just a smoke screen. It's got to be because you're telling me Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell is going to be Devonte Adams' quarterback. It just doesn't really seem right. No offense to those guys, but it's the same situation that's happening in Minnesota right now. Whoever they find to replace Kirk is not probably going to be the best, and you already know Justin Jefferson's going to be gone. Where this is Devonte Adams, you've made it, pretty obvious that he's staying. You're not trading him, but now you sign Gardner Minshew to a 2-year, $25 million deal. Without seeing the numbers, I'm like, all right, well, this has to be a smokescreen, but they're giving him 2 years, 25 million. This has to be more than that. It's definitely not a smokescreen anymore. I mean, do you think that they may try to trade and get a quarterback in the draft still, or do you think this is it?
This is a move to be a placeholder. They're probably going to go in the draft because there are so many quarterbacks coming out either this year or next year. It's not it's not going to be his gig long term, but we've got what 4 5 quarterbacks that are expected to go out in the first round this year, possibly 6. And next year, we already know there's going to be 2 that are in the pot with Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers. So they get through this year, they have a better shot of having a quarterback answer next year.
Yeah, I mean, Devontae Adams just, I guess we'll have to be patient, but you never know.
Has any wide receiver gotten a worse downgrade over a 5-year span than Devonte Adams?
It's kind of hard when you were playing with Aaron Rodgers.
What about DeAndre Hopkins?
No, because he
I
never
mean,
really had that top quarterback per
no, but
se.
there was a point when DeAndre Hopkins was arguably, and you can make a very good argument that he was the best receiver in the league, and then just I don't want to say he fell apart, but certainly hasn't been the same.
Devonte Adams hasn't fallen apart. Devonte Adams has gone from Aaron Rodgers down to Derek Carr, down to Jimmy Garoppolo, now to Gardner Minshew.
Yeah, it hasn't been
I
the
mean,
best roller coaster ride.
no.
Uh, but this next team I want to talk about, usually you hear about them the last couple of years, especially around draft time, of drafting pretty much from one college. They even got the nickname of being the Philadelphia Bulldogs because, well, seemed like their whole draft class was all Georgia Bulldogs. And I mean, can you blame them? They were back to back champions and they had some ballers on that team. But it's free agency, they're everywhere. And they are signing guys even from inside their own division. And let's start with the big one. That's Saquon Barkley. This was a big deal. The Philadelphia Eagles signed Saquon Barkley for a 3-year, $37.75 million deal. And the only one that was pissed and offended by this was Tiki Barber. And gosh, that if you haven't seen their feud online, you got to look at this. It's pretty funny. It's pretty comical to me. But here's the thing: the Giants didn't offer anything to Saquon Barkley. The Eagles did. Case closed. I mean, to me, that's enough right there. But to Tiki Barber, clearly it wasn't. You're dead to me. It sounds like the correct term that he said to Saquon Barkley. But that's one of their big deals. They got Chauncey Gardner Johnson from the Lions, 3 years, 33 million. He's returning back to Philadelphia where he thrived there. I don't think he did good at all in Detroit. And then Bryce Huff, that was a big one too. It sounded like the Jets, he was going to be
Mhm.
available, and the Eagles swooped right in and picked up Bryce Huff on a 3-year, $51 million deal. So they're cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching right now, and they are trying to bring this team back to a Super Bowl because it was expected that they were going to this last year, especially after they went to the Super Bowl a year before against the Chiefs, and it did not play out that well. They have lost the likes of Jason Kelsey to retirement, as well as Fletcher Cox, but they are showing that they want to continue to be aggressive. So you have to respect that. So, guys, how do you feel about the Saquon deal?
Well, when it comes to Saquon, I'll comment on what Tiki Barber said. To me, like this really sounds like a personal thing, as in it sounds to me like Tiki Barber is taking this as some sort of personal betrayal. Like I don't know, for lack of better terminology, that he essentially took Saquon under his wings. He offered him some advice. Maybe he felt like Saquon owed him something or something like that. Because let's be honest, you do not vocalize the phrase "you're dead to me" unless it's personal. You just don't.
Yeah, you got a point there.
Well, with Tiki Barber, I've seen so many Giants fans turn on Tiki Barber after this comment more so than Saquon Barkley. Because remember, Tiki Barber is the guy that said that Eli Manning could not win a Super Bowl whatsoever and talked crud about um, Tom Coughlin as he was heading out. So, what leg does Tiki Barber have to stand on about anything having to do with the Giants at this point?
And
Because,
also,
yeah,
didn't didn't the Giants win the Super Bowl literally right after Tiki retired?
yes, yes, they did.
Yeah.
So it was a big middle finger in the face of Tiki Barber with them winning the Super Bowl after that. But there is this culture idea that the Giants feel like they have for some reason that if you're a Giant, you're always a Giant, and you should not be anybody else, like an Eagle or a Cowboy. And that's just not the reality of NFL players. They're going to go where the money is being offered and what makes sense for them and their families. That's that's simple as that. The Giant Matthew, you said it. The Giants didn't offer him anything because they knew that they would not be able to match what he could get on the free market. There were plenty of places where people knew Saquon Barkley was being courted to, and it just so happens that the Eagles drew the lucky straw and was able to sign him on that 3-year deal.
Yeah, and we obviously, if you're watching, we are a sports show. We don't like to, talk politics or anything. But really quick, uh, to compare this to politics, you can turn on TV, you can watch whatever news channel you watch, and you'll see, politics on one side and politics on the other side going at it, bumping heads. But once those cameras are off, they are at lunch together. They are sitting at the same table. They are laughing. They are each other's best friends. The same thing could be said with Saquon. Okay, he's going into a division rival. He's, playing for the Eagles. Well, guess what? This was a great decision for him and his family, and everyone's fine with that. Yes, there are rivalries, but at the end of the day, everyone's happy if you get what you deserve. So, Saquon, good for him, and Tiki, I liked Rondé better. But Chauncey Gardner Johnson, 3 year, 33 million. I feel like they overpaid him there, but uh, he did great with Philly when he was there originally. So maybe they're hoping that he could bring that back to that defense. They're going to need it. And then Bryce Huff, that was, I think, a really big pickup. That I mean, he was really highly sought after once the Jets were making him available. So I think that was big as well. So the Eagles guys, they're making moves. And they're aggressive, but they have one of the best front offices, the best GMs in the league. So they've been showing that for many years now. So to see them being aggressive is no surprise to me.
Well, and I think,
And
and we Yeah,
go
just
ahead,
really quick,
David.
Ed. We've talked about it before, right? But like when you have a coach like Nick Sirianni, who's coaching this past season, got heavily scrutinized, you have to go all in. You have to make all these aggressive moves to to kind of help them out there.
Definitely. And keep in mind, this is an Eagles team that still has one of the best running offenses in the league. Not like the offensive line that the Giants were trying to try and get people out of the way of Saquon Barkley. This is an offensive line that can run the offense, that provides open spaces for Saquon Barkley to do Saquon Barkley things. Plus, you've got Jalen Hurts back there running an RPO scheme. Who do you take? That's the biggest part of this. Who do you take when you are trying to crash down on the line? Do you take Jalen Hurts? Do you take Saquon Barkley? And then, lo and behold, who's Jalen Hurts throwing to when he pulls the ball? He's throwing to Devontae Smith. I mean, that is a very difficult combination to get after and control that offense if time is allowed by the offensive line, which, like I said, is still one of the better offensive lines in the league. So we may see a return to 2 years ago. Yes, we're minus Jason Kelce, one of the best centers of all time, but that doesn't mean that they just suddenly forget how to block or forget how to run an offense. They picked up Saquon Barkley to go with Jalen Hurts, and it's going to be a great combination. The biggest thing is going to be the health issue, as with any of these players. The biggest thing, if he plays through his contract, I think they have success. If he doesn't, then they won't. It's just simple as that.
Yeah, and they picked up Devontae Parker at the wide receiver. I mean, that's not a pretty bad wide receiver group right there to have Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, and Devontae Parker, if healthy. I mean, that's going to be hard to cover. And on top of Saquon and Jalen Hurts running the ball, it's going to be kind of a nightmare for defenses. But there's another team that is making big splashes right now in free agency, and one of my hosts here is going to love talking about this, but a team that I think has one of the brightest futures actually right in front of them ahead. Things are looking great for them, and that is the Green Bay Packers. And Ed, I see you smiling ear to ear there. You want to talk us through some of the free agents you guys have picked up so far?
Well, first, the bad news. We lost one of the big culture guys, a couple of the big culture guys in our locker room. And that's Aaron Jones and David Bakhtiari. Those were great culture guys in our locker room. Now, Bakhtiari, no surprise to anyone, it seemed like a week after he signed a huge extension to cover the blind side of Aaron Rodgers, his knee went out and he hasn't been the same ever since. He's still really good when he's on the field. It's just, can we get him on the field? So eventually had to part ways. He was, if I remember correctly, he had the highest salary of anybody on the team, and he played about half the time. So it makes no sense to keep him. There's no surprise to anyone. It's just sad to lose him after the 11 years that he's spent in Green Bay. Now with Aaron Jones, that came as a shocker because of the way that the team has been constructed over the past few years, having a dual running back core. A.J. Dillon, already a free agent. The Packers went out and signed Josh Jacobs from the Las Vegas Raiders. I still want to say Los Angeles or Oakland. It takes me a long time. I still say San Diego. I don't know. They went out and signed Josh Jacobs. Now, for about half hour, the Packers had the best backfield in the league because Josh Jacobs gets signed for the 4-year, $48 million deal, and then half hour later, Aaron Jones has been released. It's a shame to see Aaron Jones go, but you see Josh Jacobs, he's a little younger. He's a little more physical. He runs almost as hard as Aaron Jones. So I'm happy with this move. I just need to see who else we get in the backfield because it is really starting to feel like that's who we're going to go after in the draft as a Packers fan. On the other side of the ball, we have Xavier McKinney from the Giants. We picked him up in free agency at 4 years, $68 million. Now, when you look at how the team is constructed, the pie chart, if you will, of money allocation, 2/3 of it is going to the defense, to a third on the offense. But yet the offense gets the headlines because of how young and how good the offense is right now, and how this next year they will have developed even more. So the Packers are feeling confident in putting more money into the defense because the offense is doing so well. These are good moves. These are moves that will continue to escalate the Packers into fighting with the Lions for supremacy of the NFC North, take our rightful place back away from the Lions, and move on with the playoffs and hopefully get back to the Super Bowl again.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you exactly who you're gonna get in the draft for the running back, and that's gonna be, is it Trey Benson from Florida State? Just mark my words. I think he's going to be someone that you guys draft for that second running back position, because Josh Jacobs, although he may want to, he can't run every single play. He's going to have his rest. And Trey Benson, I think, is going to be a really great physical back. Similar to how AJ Dillon was.
I don't hate the idea of getting Jonathan Brooks, even though he's coming off of injury, in a late round pick out of the University of Texas.
Yeah, I mean, he still could be there in the later rounds.
David?
Yeah. Well, listen, I understand. Obviously, Packers fans have an emotional attachment to Aaron Jones, and I don't blame them at all. I think we all have emotional attachments to certain players. But when you look at the numbers, I mean, he's reached 10 plus rushing touchdowns just one time in his career, and in the last two seasons combined, he's only had four combined rushing touchdowns. I'm sorry, like that is not going to cut it whatsoever. So when you look at it that way, you can't really be that shocked that they let him go. I mean, his production, I'm not going to say it's been terrible, but it just hasn't been there the last couple of years, especially from the rushing part of things.
Well, he did have a major hamstring injury that he worked through that took place in week 1 against the Bears. So you go through an entire season trying to rehab while still playing, it's not going to be the same. And I totally
Fair
get
enough.
where you're coming from on that, but that is part of it.
No, that fair enough. Okay, well then in that case, then it just sounds like Green Bay doesn't want to deal with it. It sounds like they don't want to deal with that sort of injury hassle.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you're absolutely right. With Aaron Jones being either second or I think third, as far as money being doled out in the salary cap for the Packers. Coming off of an injury is not something that the Packers organization has ever really done. Being patient with injured players, whether they were in house or not.
Yeah. I mean, I really like the Josh Jacobs signing as well as Xavier McKinney. I think having McKinney down as a defensive back for the Packers is really going to help them out back there. He's a great young talent that has shown that he could play the position well. He did for the Giants, and then Josh Jacobs as well, physical and fast back that's going to bring a similar presence that Aaron Jones did in that backfield. And Aaron Jones did go to a division rival with going to the Vikings. So, he's going to be playing them twice a year, just like Saquon's going to be playing the Giants twice a year. It happens. It's whoever's going to give you the most. But, you
So is
know,
Aaron, is Aaron Jones dead to you now, Ed?
No, Favre wasn't dead to me when that happened, but Zadarius Smith was dead to me when he started talking crap about the Packers by going to the Vikings.
Oh
well,
yeah.
when the time that Brett Favre left, he was kind of dead to himself. I mean, he didn't really have to be dead to anyone else. He was kind of towards the end there. But, you know, David, I'm going to ask this question to you. As a team who was, one of the worst, if not the worst, if I remember correctly, rushing team in the NFL, why hasn't Tampa Bay gotten any running backs? Do you think they're gonna get them in the draft?
I don't know, man. I mean, it's possible, but running back or no running back, I do like some of the moves that the Bucks have made. I mean, today I think it was today we just uh brought back Levante David for 1 year. And listen, Levante David is a Buck for life. He is an absolute legend. I mean, even at the age he's at right now, it's just amazing the sort of consistency that he's been able to put up. And then, of course, bringing back Baker Mayfield on the deal that he's on, I think that was absolutely the right move. And then just let me just say something about Baker real quick and all the people doubting him. I understand that when you look at Baker's numbers, for a guy who was a former number one overall pick, they're not great, right? But context also matters when you're talking about Baker because one, he was drafted by, at the time, the absolute worst organization in sports, not just the NFL, but just in sports, period. He's had to deal with a different head coach or a different offensive coordinator, practically every single season. I mean, number one pick or not, it's hard to maintain a level of consistently decent play when you're practically relearning a system, you're learning a new system every single year. And for Baker himself, I'm happy for him because it really feels like for the first time in his professional career, he finally has some stability. Of course, he's going to have to deal with yet another offensive coordinator. So, but even so, I'm happy for him. I think this was the right move for both the Bucks and Baker. And yeah,
Yeah, I mean, there were several teams that really went into free agency. You didn't know what they were going to do, but then they ended up deciding to really bring back the band, and the Bucks were one of them. And I think what was nice to see, for Baker is not only the contract he got, but the backing that was behind him. Mike Evans, vouching for him and stuff like that. As a quarterback, especially like Baker, who's been around, this gives you that confidence, and I really feel like a confident Baker Mayfield can be scary in the NFL. I truly still believe in him. He was the number 1 pick for a reason, and I think that Baker can do some great things in the NFL. He just has to get it together, and we saw that. We saw glimpses of that this last year. I know you did, David. I mean, the fact that the Bucks had the number 1 worst rushing offense in the NFL, but yet he still brought him to the playoffs, and Baker Mayfield was up there in the
mhm.
NFL for most passing yards too. So it was really great to see what Baker was able to put together this year. And this next year, I think he's going to have some more confidence. And I think this NFC South, though, like I said earlier in this show, it being one of the worst divisions in the league, I think they're going to have quite the battle at the top between them and Atlanta.
The last thing I'll say about Baker is that there's people who I feel like they're still clinging on to that immature part of him. Like when he came into the NFL, he was arrogant, he was cocky. Yes, he was all of that, and I feel like people are still kind of holding that against him. But Baker's grown up. All right, he's emerged as a leader for the Bucks. The Baker that is in the NFL today is not the same Baker that entered into the NFL those years ago.
So let me ask this question now that we've talked about the Buccaneers and the Falcons. What is your hierarchy of the quarterbacks in the AFC in the NFC South? Because you've got Derek Carr, you've got Trevor Lawrence, Baker Mayfield, and now Kirk Cousins.
I
Uh,
To me, there's not a whole lot of separating all four of them.
I think you got those mixed up, Ed, because Trevor Lawrence is in the AFC South.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bryce Young. So we can take him out. Uh,
Yeah.
so you take those three though. What's the differentiator?
I mean, if we're just going to go by rankings, I mean, obviously I'm going to be biased here, full stop. But I would say, and if we're just judging off of the last season, I would say number one, Baker Mayfield. Number two, Kirk Cousins. Number three, Derek Carr. I'm going to you know, what's his name? Matt Moscona, who I'm not a big fan of Matt Moscona, but I will say that he has a term for Derek Carr, and I think it is absolutely brilliant. But he calls Derek Carr the empty yards emperor. You know, like he'll get you all those yards, but then when it matters the most in crunch time, he will not deliver for you.
I think going into this year, I'd have to agree with David. I'll put Baker up there, and then Kirk Cousins, and then Derek Carr. This isn't to talk about who's had the better career, but I think going into this year, I think Baker will be the better is the better quarterback, and of course we have to it still lingers of how's Kirk Cousins going to do after this injury, but even with that, if I don't even think about that, the season that Baker had this last year, I think was tremendous. So I'd have to rank them at that one, two, three, and then Bryce Young is to be determined because, well, he was a rookie last year.
Yeah, I mean, dude, the Panthers are just a total joke. I mean, like they don't. What was it that just happened? That they don't trade Brian Burns for a first round pick or something like that.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
a
they traded him for a pack of Hubba Bubba.
Dude,
yeah.
I'm at like it was like they are such a joke that Luke Combs, who is a noted Carolina Panthers fan, actually tweeted about it yesterday, and he usually only tweets about his music and all that. So like when that happens, you know that things are going bad for you.
Oh, that fan base is pissed right now. They are livid with what happened there, and not even Big League Chew, Hubba Bubba. Like, come on, man. I mean, my jaw's hurting thinking about it right now. It's like it's like a mamba. What is it? The mamba. Those my mouth, my
Uh,
jaw is hurting.
you you unlocked the part of my memory that I forgot that I had, Matthew.
I know. Sorry, Ed started it, but yeah, Carolina. That we will talk more about them. But since we talked about the Packers, we talked about Tampa Bay. I got to squeeze in my Steelers before we end the show here. Steelers essentially started the domino effect with free agency because, well, they were given permission earlier, before the tampering period, and that was with Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson, if as you know, was released from his mega contract with the Broncos, took a massive cap hit, and he took 39 million with him. And his first team he met with was the Giants, and then met with the Steelers, and we signed him to a vet minimum 1.2 million. I mean, that's cheap. He wasn't going to take anything big, well, because he was already getting 39 million from his prior team. Quite the
You know
severance
what's funny?
package.
You know what's funny about that? I think Jake Crane from Crane and Company. It was either him or David Cohn, one of those guys from that show. But they said that the NFL might be the only job in the world where it's actually better to get fired than hired because of all the buyout money.
Oh my gosh, it's crazy. It's like that's why it's like it doesn't even matter anymore. It's like unlimited money to spend. But with Russell Wilson, he did take that vet minimum, and for a team like the Steelers, who is trying to get as much money as they can possible because they were pretty close with the cap this next year, getting Russell Wilson for 1.2 is a no brainer. Is he the old Russell Wilson? Is he going to bring this team to the promised land? I don't know. I mean, I right now I'll say no because he hasn't shown that he can. But what's one thing that Russell Wilson has done before with a great defense? Well, he has brought them to Super Bowls, and the Steelers do have a great defense. And speaking of, they bolstered their defense with none other than Patrick Queen. Brought him over
Yeah.
from the Baltimore Ravens, 3 years, $41 million. And he's another interesting case because just like Russell Wilson, is Patrick Queen that good? Or did he look good because of Roquan Smith or that Baltimore Ravens defense? And I think two things could be right at once. Yes, but I think Patrick Queen is still a good linebacker, and I think that with the what we got him for with 3 year, 41 million, I think is a great steal, and it's actually going to help us out cap wise because of the signing bonuses and the guarantees versus the cap hits. So it shows you the Steelers want to continue to do more signings. And then right when that happens, we make a trade where we trade Deontay Johnson to the Carolina Panthers and we get Dante Jackson. So one DJ to another DJ. And still no live ban, Ed. But it actually isn't a trade that really made sense to me. I get wanting to trade Deontay Johnson, but Dante Jackson is due actually more money than Deontay Johnson was. And this is actually going to hurt us unless we restructure his contract or possibly cut him. So this is going to be an interesting situation for the Steelers because right when we thought we were taking steps forward, we did take a slight step back with this trade. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the Patrick Queen and the Russell Wilson signing because Kenny Pickett. I would like to see if he could do more because I feel like we owe it to him, first round draft pick, and he had to deal with Matt Canada, and anyone who has to deal with him, I feel like should get some due diligence. But Mason Rudolph sounds like he's gone. Mitch Trubisky went back to Buffalo, so we needed a quarterback, and we're number 20th in the NFL draft. Yeah, Bo Nix, Michael Penix might have been available then, but I don't think we wanted to use our first pick for a quarterback. So Russell Wilson getting him for $1.2 million, like I said, was a no brainer. So will he bring us to the promised land? I don't really know, but we're the Steelers. I expect us to at least squeak into the playoffs, but maybe we'll have better chances with Russell Wilson there.
When I saw the news about Patrick Queen going to the Steelers, I was absolutely shocked, just totally shocked. I mean, young player, one of the best linebackers in the NFL. I understand money concerns. I mean, there's really no other logical explanation than that. But I thought for sure that the Ravens would have brought back Patrick Queen. But there is a part of me that does want to give the Ravens the benefit of the doubt because they've been really pretty much since since they first formed as a team, they've been one of the most well-run teams in the NFL. They've never really had any like stretch of down years, and even when they do have a down year, they usually bounce back right away. So I do want to give them the benefit of the doubt there. But even this just seems like what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, and well, with the whole Patrick Queen thing, a lot of people probably didn't even expect this. I don't know if you've heard the Mike Tomlin story yet. It's been floating around, but we heard about it mainly last year. Patrick Queen mentioned it, but Patrick Queen was a rookie with Baltimore Ravens. Mike Tomlin would yell at him on the field, and he would yell at him, tell him, "You can't call yourself a Raven until you beat the Pittsburgh Steelers." And he would yell at him on the field about that because the Ravens at the time had not beat the Steelers while he was on the team. And you hear something like that and you think, wow, why would I want to play for a coach like that or anything like that? But they end up, respecting each other for it. And as you know, the Baltimore Ravens, Pittsburgh Steelers, we practically trade blows every year. And John Harbaugh is always going to bring it. The Ravens will always bring it, and we do as well. But to sign someone like that who's only played in the AFC North, I like it because AFC North is very physical, and to have someone like him on the inside and to let TJ do his thing on the outside, I love it. Just like we talked about earlier with Christian Wilkins and Max Crosby, that's something our defense needed because we've been searching for that inside linebacker since the Ryan Shazier unfortunate injury. And hopefully we found our guy. I really hope that we do for our sake, but we will find out. But that is pretty much what all that we have today because there is a lot more that we could talk about and we will talk about it more as it happens. But for right now, that's a lot to cover. So if there's been any moves that we might have missed, we will be covering some more. but feel free to drop it in the comment section. Let us know who you think's the biggest signing so far. Do you agree with us about it being Kirk Cousins with Atlanta? I mean, I think that was such a big impact by bringing him in. I feel like it's kind of a no-brainer, but you may disagree. So if you do, feel free to drop in the comment section who you think has been the biggest signing so far, biggest impact signing, and maybe the biggest bust signing that you really feel like did not deserve that much money or really shouldn't have gone to that team. I'll be interested to see what you guys have to say as well. But if you could like and subscribe and share these videos, we would really appreciate it. It does help us out. And, we try to give you guys the best content that we can. And by doing so, sharing these videos will help us to continue doing that, guys. But until next time, we are rounding third and we are headed for home.